I want to talk about children's allowance. And this is a conversation that has been had many times in the past. And it's to do with whether or not children's allowance should be a universal payment. And what I mean by a universal payment is here in Ireland, anybody who is born in this state is entitled to children's allowance. No matter how rich or how poor your parents are, you are entitled to children's allowance just like everybody else is. Now, it has often raised the whole conversation and the whole question about whether or not a multimillionaire in Ireland deserves the same monthly payment as somebody who is living off welfare. And that's really what this whole conversation comes down to. Should we essentially discriminate against the children of richer parents? Because here's what a Fine Gael councillor who's gotten himself into a little bit of hot water over this, he said, paying child benefits to all parents, irrespective of income, is a subsidy for them to have sex. This is South County Dublin councillor David McManus, who said that child benefit payments of 140 per month per child are awarded to all parents, including high earners. And he said social welfare should be awarded to those who need it most. David said, when money is scarce, my view is you give it to those who most need it. Child benefit goes to every child in the country. We're giving child benefit to families on high wages, people on €100,000 a year. It's like a subsidy for them to have sex. So let's debate that one and send us a WhatsApp to 085 825 2626. 085 825 2626. Should we cut child benefit for parents who don't need the money? That's the question that we're asking you. 085 825 2626. Your opinion, please, Mr. Dixon.
First of all, I think David McManus, he was lashed out of it on Twitter yesterday, on social media, with people calling him all sorts of things. If you take the way he worded it was quite badly, okay, and he could have probably worded it better, and I'm sure he realizes that himself. I was talking to him last night as this whole thing was blowing up, and the points he was making was that a lot of things are means tested, which they are. College fees, college grants, all that is means tested. What he's saying, in part, I don't disagree with, and I don't think anybody would announce a cop on would not disagree with him either. Because basically, what he's saying is there are a lot of people out there who need children's allowance, yes, who wait for it to come in every month, and that money goes on the kids' shoes, or maybe there's a birthday coming up, or maybe the kids need clothes, and that's what children's allowance is for. There are other people, a lot of people, who it goes into their bank account every month. The €140 goes into their bank account a month, and it just sits there. They don't even realize it goes in. They don't need it. So why would you go buy a house on Killiney, like a house worth $3 million on Killiney, where they've 4 cars in their driveway and they own 6 businesses and they've properties here, there, and everywhere? They do not need the children's allowance for their children. They don't need it.
No, they don't need it. No, I agree with you. They don't need it. However, here's the thing: in this country, Ireland, children are all treated equally on paper and in our constitution. So there is no difference. So if you were to say,
but that's not true. By the way, children aren't all treated differently. If that were the case, why are there children eating food out of homeless shelters and stuff like that? So all children aren't treated equally.
But they should be. That's the point.
But they're not. They're not.
They may not be, but they should be. So if you make children's allowance means tested, then you are automatically discriminating against the children of wealthier parents. It's not their fault that mommy and daddy happen to be loaded. It is just an accident of birth. So why would you discriminate against that child? And if a parent, and this goes back to your point.
By the way, you're not discriminating against the child. The child doesn't know. I have 2 kids, yeah? 2 kids. they don't even know what children's allowance is, and it wouldn't.
I understand that.
Listen to me for a second. It wouldn't change their life in any way if their children's allowance was cut next week. You know, they're not going to go hungry.
This is a point of principle, though. This is a point of principle, and the fact is that children's allowance is given to all children. So if
it's not given to. By the way, you're saying that it's not given to all children. It's given to the parents of children, and in a lot of cases,
the children.
It's not given to children. It doesn't go into the child's bank account. My son doesn't get money into his bank account every month.
No, I know that, but it's called child benefit
protection. Yes, but a lot of it doesn't even go on the children. A lot of the times, the parents will spend on other things. To say,
if on one hand you have parent A who desperately needs that 140 or 280 euro a month to arrive into their bank account because they're struggling and they need the money. Okay, so that's on the one hand. And then on the other hand, you have a parent who doesn't need the money as much and can afford to leave it in a bank account until the child reaches the age of 18, and that's the child's college fund. Yeah, if that's what the parent chooses to use it for. Who are we to tell parents what they should or shouldn't spend their money on? And that's what this comes down to.
No, it comes down to giving to the needy and taking away from the rich.
But the needy are getting it. The needy are getting it.
Yes, they are getting it.
There's no chance of Ireland increasing its children's allowance rate. We've one of the most generous children's allowances in the whole of Europe. We come just behind, I think, Luxembourg in terms of the rate that we pay. So
no, it is. I mean, if you have three kids, you get €420 a month in child benefit. That's a nice little paycheck to come into your account at the end of the month. But if you are struggling, there's people watching this right now, listening to this right now, who are struggling paycheck to paycheck and praying for the end of the month, and they rely on that social welfare payment, the children's allowance. Perhaps we could increase it if we took it away from the people who don't need it.
We're not going to. And realistically, for all the paperwork that it involves, to discriminate against people, to means test children's allowance, when you have a child, you get a birth cert and you register for children's allowance. It's very simple. It's like over the last year, people applying for the pandemic unemployment payment. It was made so simple. You lost your job, you sign on, no questions asked. And that's exactly what children's allowance is as well. When you submit the birth cert of the child, away you go. You get that money until the child is older. Now, to add in a layer of bureaucracy to means test children or parents is going to be an absolute nightmare. It's much simpler to just pay everybody, even
I have a very simple answer.
Need it.
Very simple answer to this. If a household is bringing in more than 100k a year, they shouldn't have child benefits. That would make perfect sense. Any household that's bringing in 100 grand a year is doing okay. They don't need child benefits, no matter how many kids they have. So that'd be quite simple. A cutoff of 100,000. So if a family,
let's run a very quick poll. We want you to answer yes or no to this question. Here is the question: should child benefit be means tested and cut off for people who earn over 100 grand a year? Okay, so that's the question. Yes or no, and send your yes or no to 085 825 2626. Should child benefit be means tested and cut off for people earning over 100,000 a year? That's the question. Now we're talking about couples who earn 100,000 a year or more. Send a yes or no to 085 825 2626. Okay, so the question once again is: should child benefit be means tested and cut off for people earning over 100,000 a year? Send yes or no to 085 825 2626. We'd love to hear from you and find out whether or not you think it should be cut off for people earning over 100 grand. Okay, so I'll give you that question one more time. Should child benefit be means tested and cut off for people earning over 100,000 euro a year? Send a yes or a no to 085 825 2626. We're very interested to find out. And you can also send us a WhatsApp voice note with your opinion on this. 085 825 2626. Me, I don't believe it should be means tested. I believe all children should be treated equally. And even if mommy and daddy decide to put that money into a bank account and leave it there for the next 18 years and give it to little Johnny or little Mary as their college fund, fine. That's their business.
How is that? And to take through the point that you're making, how is that fair? Supposing supposing myself, this household where I live in now is bringing in over 100k a year. By the way, we're not bringing in 100k a year, okay? And we could afford never to touch the children's allowance, and we just put it all into the two kids' bank accounts. Yeah, so every week 280 quid was going into the bank account until they were 18 years of age, and then they'd have a nice little deposit for a house when they reach the age of 18. How is that fair?
Right.
How is that fair that, you know, we didn't need the money and we got it, and it's given other kids a head start in life. That's what it is. You're saying equality for all children. This is not equality, it's inequality. You know, there are children who will never have to worry about college fees. They'll never have to worry about getting a mortgage for a house because mommy and daddy can afford to buy them something, and you want to give them more money. You want to throw more money at them. There you go, more money. You have buckets of money, but there's more money for you now.
085 825 2626 is our WhatsApp number. Get involved in this conversation and let us know whether or not you think children's allowance, and this is the question, and we want you to answer yes or no. The question once again is, should children's allowance be means tested, and should people over 100 grand be cut off? 085 825 2626. Send us a voice note or a yes or no to that question. Let's have a listen to this WhatsApp voice note.
I absolutely think that it should be means tested. Like, if you're on 100k, 100,000 a year, like, that's just a mental amount of money to be making. And I'm sure anyone who's on that much money probably doesn't even notice their child benefit going in every month. Like me, for example, I'm trying to run a car. I'm renting. Do you know, like, I have a child. I'm on very low income because I'm working part-time. And I do wait for that money to come in every week or every month because I do need it. I just feel like people who are getting it should maybe be donating it at this point. But yeah, absolutely 100% should be means tested after 100k.
All right. We'd like to get your opinion on this. Should children's allowance be means tested means tested, and should people over 100 grand be cut off, basically? 085 825 2626. Let's have a listen to Councillor David McManus. And he is the guy who kind of started this conversation. He was speaking on Local Voices, which is a podcast series by the Echo newspaper, and it focuses on local issues and regularly interviews politicians from the Tala area. Councillor David McManus, they were having a conversation. I just want to put this in context because it's important. They were having a conversation about how some schools were getting school meals and others weren't, and some were being discriminated against and everything else. And here's what Councillor David McManus said during that conversation to the Echo newspaper's Local Voices podcast series.
For me personally, I would say hot meals for the schools should be there for all DESH schools and all disadvantaged schools that need it. I don't think it would be proper to say we're going to give this to every school in the country, because I think when money is scarce, my view is you give it to those who most need it. And as a similar issue, child benefit goes to families all over the country. We're giving child benefit to families on high wages, people on 100,000 euros a year. It's like a subsidy for them to have sex.
It's like a subsidy for them to have sex.
Okay,
the Councillor David McManus said.
But typically, people latched onto that. What he said, obviously, Jesus, he shouldn't have said what he said, and he worded it wrong. But people just latched onto that. As usual, Irish people never read past the headline, and they saw that quote, children's allowance is a subsidy for people to have sex. What they didn't read into is what he was pretty much saying was that we need to look after the vulnerable in society and forget about the rich for a while. Do people not agree with that? I mean, are we living in a country now where...
Okay, but my argument, as I said, is that I believe that all children should be treated equally, and I don't believe we should... Okay, so say, for example...
Children are not treated...
Hang on.
Stop saying
parents who are earning 100
equally.
grand a year, and suddenly they fall on hard times, their business goes bankrupt, they get made redundant from their job. Do they then have to apply for child benefit? That's the point. Come here. Just what I think of it. I want to say hello to two people on Facebook who very kindly sent us stars, which you can do on Facebook. Dawn Costello and Pamela Lee. Thank you very much indeed for those Facebook stars which you've just sent to us. We're very grateful. Thanks very much indeed, and that enables us to keep doing what we're doing. And you can do the same, by the way. Anyway, thank you very much indeed to the two of you. Now.
Can I just address a comment that just came? Can I just address a comment that just came in on our Facebook page? Because this person is living with their head in the sand. There are very few people in the country who are bringing in more than 100K a year in a household. How can you even believe that for one moment? There are thousands, tens of thousands of households that are doing very well. Drive up around Killiney Hill, drive around Foxrock, drive around Castleknock, drive down the countries where these big houses are and big farms. And you're telling me that there aren't people bringing in 100K a year. By the way, 100K a year isn't a huge amount of money. I mean, it's not going to make you rich. But any family bringing in 100K a year is living comfortably. And don't tell me that they're not. And to claim that there's very few people earning over 100K a year, absolute nonsense. This country has never been more divided between rich and poor. There are very, very rich people, and I wouldn't begrudge them the money. They obviously worked hard, you know, they studied hard, they went to college, they got businesses, they got good jobs. I wouldn't begrudge them their wealth or anything like that. But there is a lot of wealthy people out there, and people seem to forget that. And there's also a lot of people who can't afford to feed the children from one end of the week to the next. And that's what we're talking about.
All right, let's have a listen to this WhatsApp voice note from Dave.
I can't believe I'm actually going to say this, but every child and every family in this country is entitled to child benefit. We can't just start, cutting people off because they make too much money. Because in this day and age, a combined income of €100,000 a year, especially living in a place like Cork or Dublin, isn't really a lot. And I'm saying this as a person who is living fairly close to the breadline. Like, do you really think that they cut child benefit for rich people, they're going to increase it for everyone else? They're not. They're just going to piss it into the wind like they normally do. And I'm sorry, but that's fresh coming from a guy from Fine Gael, whose government spent nearly €1 million on the printer. They couldn't get into the building. Then the people supposed to use the printer wouldn't use it because the union said they needed pay rises, and they wasted €2 billion on a hospital that isn't even finished yet. So I'm sorry, no, but your man can take his, we're giving people, paying people to have sex thing and just shove it up his arse. How about we talk about where the real money is really being lost in this country?
All right, Dave, thanks very much indeed. 085 825 2626 is our WhatsApp number. Should children's allowance be means tested, and should people earning over 100 grand a year be cut off? That's really the question that we're asking. Well, Mr. D?
It's bizarre what's coming in. There's not a lot of agreement for you, I have to say, Adrian. There's a message on Facebook from Carl, and he says, Adrian is living in a dream world. Does he think Michael O'Leary's kids need the children's allowance? No, I don't even know. Does Michael O'Leary have kids?
I don't actually know, to be honest, but if they do, so if he does, so what?
Okay, so his kids need the money. They're struggling. Is that what you're saying? All
children. This is what this conversation comes down to. All children, in the eyes of our Constitution, are treated equally. For a discrimination to be made, this is called child benefit, by the way. This isn't Mickey money to go out on the piss on the first Tuesday of every month. Okay, that's not what it's designed for. 085 825 2626 is our WhatsApp number. Let's have a listen to this WhatsApp voice note from Tig, and he says, some people can't afford to live on 100K.
I think, lads, I don't think it's as simple as just means testing someone. Because even if someone is earning 100 grand a year, living in the city centre is quite expensive. Like, let's just say you had a mother and a father earning 100 grand a year. Their 100 grand a year isn't actually enough to get a 450 grand mortgage. They'll only get 300 grand. And let's just say they wanted a 3-bedroom house or a 4-bedroom house for the amount of kids that they have. So if, let's just say, they are renting a 4-bedroom house, like the rates at the moment for a 4-bedroom house are what, like 3 grand a month, like 2,750, 2.5 grand. Like, so a year for rent alone, you're talking, well, at worst 3 grand by 12 is 36 grand a year. Now you're talking about 100 grand gross. So not only are they going to be paying 36 grand a year, but they're also going to be paying their extra tax that they would pay after 35,000 each. Do you know what I mean? So like, let's just say, right, they're paying after 35,700, they're going to pay 40% tax on their earnings after that. So what are we going to means test it on gross income or net income or income after expenses like rent and electricity and gas? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not as simple as just saying, right, 100 grand, bish bash bosh. Like, you know, some people can't afford to live with 100 grand. I don't know, it might sound crazy, but you know, that's the way it is.
I'm sorry, Ty.
Thanks, Ty.
If Tig is trying to claim that there's people struggling who are bringing in 100 grand a year, and I know the point you're making, they may have a bigger mortgage, they may have a bigger house. This is the problem.
And if they live in Dublin, he just mentioned about rent prices in Dublin. It's extortionate. We all know how expensive it is to live here.
Don't even try and insult your intelligence by saying that people bringing in 100 grand a year are struggling, because if you are struggling, get a smaller house, you know, get one less car. You know, don't go on the 4 holidays a year you have. There's nobody earning 100 grand a year who's struggling. And if they are struggling, they need to. What I was always told, and I was taught being brought up, is cut your cloth. What is it? Cut your cloth to meet your measure.
To suit your measure, yeah.
And live beyond your means. By the way, Michael O'Leary, have you been doing
Don't live beyond your means.
Or don't live beyond your means. Michael O'Leary, who we've been talking about here, he's spoken out about children's allowance in the past before. And back in 2011, wait till you all get a load of this. Michael O'Leary was at a press conference, and here's what he said, quote, Michael O'Leary, the boss of Ryanair, said that child benefit, children's allowance, is subsidising people to have sex. Where did we hear that before? He literally said the same thing that David McManus said. He said that the payment should be scrapped for everybody, acknowledging that his comments would probably get him into trouble. So he was speaking at Knock Airport, and he suggested that the benefits should target people on low incomes. He said, you need to channel children's allowance for people on lower incomes through income support schemes and single parents' allowances. So he is saying, or he said, and maybe he's changed his tune 10 years later, but he was saying exactly word for word what that Councillor David McManus has been saying. And all he's saying is, give it, take from the rich, give to the poor. Isn't that what Robin Hood used to do? Take from the rich, give to the poor. That's all we're talking about.
If he was asked a specific question, he's obviously not going to, he was never going to say, Michael O'Leary was never going to say, oh, I'm entitled to it as well, because he's minted. So let's read a couple of your messages. Children's allowance should be for those who need support. So those seeking it should be means tested. So there's a lot of opinions coming in on this. Let's have a listen to this from Angela.
Hi guys. Yeah, absolutely, it should be means tested. If you're earning like 70, 80, 90, 100 grand a year, even more, you're taking from people who actually really do need it. But on that hand, I'm not saying increase the amount of children's allowance. I'm not saying increase it at all. I'm just saying take from the people who don't need it and distribute it somewhere through, you know, with medical or disability or, you know, the elderly. But certainly anyone who's earning that amount of money does not need it. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much.
Well, Adrian, respond to that.
No, they don't need it. This all comes down, and again, I'll reiterate what I said. This comes down to the fact that in the Irish Constitution, children are treated equally. So to discriminate against a child who is not, who's born of wealthy parents would be unconstitutional.
Well,
now,
is it okay?
I don't think there are many rich people.
I know families. Hang on a second. I know families who are struggling, yeah, and their kids have never been on a foreign holiday. Their kids are 10 years of age and have never been on a holiday. Is that discrimination? Are they being discriminated against because they're not getting a holiday to Spain? Whereas the rich family in Castleknock, the kids go on skiing holidays to the family lodge every year. Is that discrimination? Are we discriminating against children who aren't getting holidays?
All right. I have a couple more messages to play, and Stephen Simpson is watching us on Facebook. Stephen, thanks very much indeed for the stars that you just sent us. They make a little bit of a difference for us. Lauren doesn't touch her child benefit at all.
My child benefit goes into an account every month that I don't touch and haven't touched really for years. And hopefully that will do for my kids going to college or whatever else is needed in the future. And it's nice to have that little bit of security there. Doesn't mean that I don't struggle at times month by month for things, but I just do it out. And I just think that, you know, having it that we're all equal, that all kids are equal, it just makes it easier than for them to start mean testing it. Will end up maybe one day affecting every one of us, even people on lower incomes and stuff. So I think it's probably just better to leave well enough alone.
All right, Lauren, thanks very much indeed for your message. Now, would you have an issue with her? She puts the money away and it's there for her kids' college fund. I said that earlier on.
Yeah, I would have a problem with it. Sure, I said that 20 minutes ago. That's not what children's allowance is for.
Okay, would you have a problem then?
You asked me a question. You asked me a question.
Yeah, you have a problem with her putting her children's allowance money away for her children?
It's great that she can do it, and I'm delighted that she can do it, but that's not what children's allowance was brought in for. It's not to be used as a nest egg to kickstart your children's future in college or to give them a deposit on a house. Children's allowance is meant to be, well, sorry, maybe I'm completely wrong. My understanding is that children's allowance is to help parents with the everyday costs, like back to school costs, uniform costs. Having children is bloody expensive.
Okay, you
drain money from you.
You have 2 children. Is that what you use your children's allowance for?
Yes, it's used for the likes of school books when they come out. It's used for clothes because they go through clothes at a serious rate. So yes, it's used. Sometimes it's used on the weekly shopping. By the way, we put it towards it. But I don't use it to buy a new Lego set for myself. If that's what you're claiming, or if the new.
All right, let's squeeze in another couple of messages, and I want to say thank you to Michelle Mullins, who's watching us on Facebook. Thank you very much indeed, Michelle. You know why we're saying thank you. This is Robbie.
Jeremy, using that logic, if you can't afford to have kids and you need children's allowance, then don't have kids.
You see,
that's
the counter argument to this whole conversation.
This is a drum I've been banging for years and years and years, and you know that, Adrian, because I apply the same logic. You know, live within your means, and there are people who live within their means when it comes to having children. By the way, I don't think we should be like China, where we should be limiting people to the amount of children we have. But a lot of people don't use common sense when they are family planning. I mean, when we had our first child, yeah, and we realized it's only when you have kids you realize how expensive they are and how much money they cost. Before we decided to have a second child, we sat down and we had a conversation. Can we afford to have a second child? What's this going to mean? Are we going to have to buy a bigger house? You know, how much money more is it? Because children cost money. I mean, I'd love to live in a fairyland, which a lot of Irish people seem to live in, where they can just have baby after baby after baby. They can have as many babies as they want and then not worry about who's going to put clothes on their back or who's going to put food on the table. And that was never our plan. So our plan was to work out, can we afford to have sex? I mean, I'd love 10 little Jeremys running around the street at the moment.
God.
No, but in an ideal situation, you would have 10 children if you wanted them and not have to worry about the cost of it. And some people do. You know, you see people who have 5 and 6 and 7 children, and they struggle every month. And by the way, it's different if you have a really good job and a really good career ahead of yourself, and you end up having a lot of kids, and then you fall on hard times. We can all fall on hard times. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about these people who just have child after child after child with no support or no income coming in. Like, why in God's name would you try to start a family if you didn't have a fully paid job? Why would you do that?
You get caught out. Not everybody plans their pregnancies in a routine way.
Well, you get cut out 4 times in a row.
It happens. It shouldn't happen, but it happens. 085 825 2626 is our WhatsApp number. Keep your messages coming in. We're very interested to find out whether or not you think child support, children's allowance should be means tested. Sue Murphy on Facebook, thank you very much indeed, Sue, for your stars that you just sent us. Let's have a listen to this message from Hazel.
Hi guys, I was part of the Trinity Access program several years ago when this was being discussed before, and one of the professors was saying that it should be means tested because that the gap between basically the rich and the not so rich is amplified by the fact that the children's allowance is not means tested, because most families need to use children's allowance just to, you know, do cover their monthly costs. But the families that can afford to send their children to Trinity College without any problems, actually a lot of them, majority of them, use children's allowance in an account to pay for their children in college, again, because they don't actually need it. It's seen as an extra income and they use it for college, which is fair enough. But by it not being means tested, it's keeping that bracket of people that would, that if it was means tested, wouldn't go further. So therefore, it's just keeping that process of the rich being rich and getting all, you know, to go into the college and stuff like that without it coming out of their pocket, whereas the lower incomes that do need it, it is necessary. It's like a disposable income, and they just make it just to keep it going.
All right. Thank you very much indeed for your message, Hazel.
She's completely counteracting what you're saying, Adrian. She's completely counteracting what you're saying.
If you've a quick comment that you want to get into us, send us a quick voice note or a WhatsApp to 085 825 2626. And Teresa Bracken, who is watching us on Facebook. Teresa, thank you very much indeed for that very generous few stars that you've sent us. And also Sue Murphy as well. They're both watching us on Facebook Live. Now,
the comment from Eric there on Facebook, it's a typical Irish mentality to pop out as many kids as you can and then expect the government to pay for it.
Okay, not everybody does that. I still firmly believe that at the end of the day, children, regardless of their parents' wealth, should be treated equally and should be entitled to children's allowance. And as we said, people can fall on hard times.
They can.
Parents can fall on hard times. You can 1 minute be in a nice job, another minute out on your ear. It happens.
Oh, don't we know it? Don't we know it?
Don't we know it? Exactly.
But we do have, Ireland has a very generous social welfare support system in place that a lot of other countries don't have. And we should be thankful that there is support there for people who do fall in hard times. And that's not what we were talking about. And let's make that clear. We're talking about people who decide to have 3 and 4 children when they don't have a regular income coming in, and there's no hope on the horizon of there being a good income coming in. I don't know why you would do that.
Here's a message actually from Niall that just came into us, and it says, it should only cover 3 children per family at the time. Anyone who doesn't spend it before they reach 18 should give it back. Now, I don't think... No, I realistically don't think somebody... Well, Michael O'Leary, when his child turns 18, look, there's 10 grand, I'll just send it back. No, that's not how it works. But maybe there is an argument that children's allowance should only cover your first 3 children. If you have more, then maybe it shouldn't cover you. Anyway, there you go. Interesting conversation.